Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. Meredith Colby, it is such a pleasure having you here. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Marissa. I'm really looking forward to being here. I am well. I am happy. It's a
And
beautiful
you,
day in Chicago.
and you know what? I love Chicago. I had Laurie Sonnenberg on the show last week,
Oh,
and yes, and she's from Chicago also. It must be Chicago month perhaps, but it is my one of my favorite cities to visit in the US, and I can't wait to go back there. And now I have two friends to hang out with.
yes, you do.
And
Yes,
we
you do.
can we can probably get up to a lot of trouble in Chicago.
I imagine we could. And see some good theater and eat some good restaurants. It's a great restaurant city, isn't it?
Yes, I had beautiful food there, and I also saw Hamilton in
Oh, did
Chicago.
you?
Yes, it was so good. Now,
Yeah.
it's about you, Meredith. We're all about you today.
It's all about me.
I know, don't you love that? So, you are a vocal coach, a voice expert, an author, and creator of the Neuro-Vocal method. But let's start with young Meredith. When did you start singing, and was that something that was encouraged in your family?
Yes, it was encouraged in my family. My mother played piano, and I would sit next to her on the piano bench, and she taught me old standards.
Right.
So she would play and we would sing together.
Oh, that's so cool. And was that the music that you were growing up with? Was that sort of jazz standards?
Yes, the records we had were folk, mostly folk music, and then and jazz, of course, Ella Fitzgerald. We wore that one out, and then we sang at the piano together, and that was fairly frequently. Yeah, and then of course I did probably what every singer does in school, or most singers. I was in all the choirs and auditioned for all the solos. My earliest memory of doing a solo, I think I was 10 years old, and I
Hmm.
sang Thoroughly Modern Millie. And I
Oh,
remember there was a lady in the front row, and she was an older lady, and she was laughing. And I, being 10 years old and taking myself very seriously, imagined that she was laughing at me. And now, of course, I realize I was 10. I was probably really cute.
oh, I'm sure.
Right? Because it was Thoroughly Modern Millie. That lady was probably alive in the 20s, and she probably thought it was hilarious to hear a 10-year-old sing Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Probably, but definitely very, very cute. So they were your inspirations. And when did you start your formal singing training?
When I was 14.
Hmm. And was that in classical?
Yes. It
Okay.
was. My parents had not had formal training. My mother had piano lessons when she was a kid and a teenager, but she hadn't had any singing lessons, although she was a singer. And my father was a minister, and so he sang. Of course, you have to sing when you're the minister. And they did not know that there was a difference. And even if they had, they would not have been able to get me any training in contemporary styles, obviously, at that
Mhm.
time. So it was, yes, they just got me voice lessons, and voice lessons, by definition, meant
Yes.
classical lessons. So, yes, I had classical lessons from 14 years old all the way through high school, and then I had a year off while I was traveling, and then and I did some performing at that time. And then I went back to college and had 5 more years of classical lessons.
Wow.
And then I went on the road with a rock band and trashed my voice.
Okay,
Yay!
so let's just back a bit here
Reel
because
that back in.
yeah, let's just reel it. No. So when you were
Uh,
having these classical lessons, did it feel strange to you? I mean, were you singing classical music outside of those lessons? What
no,
did
I
you?
had no, I had no experience with classical music at all. I mean, church, church choir music,
Mhm.
and I guess the choir, the high school choir, they give you some classical pieces, of course. But wasn't anything I listened to. I didn't have an ear for what it was, for the nugget of it, for the heart of it, you know. I
Yes.
didn't I didn't understand what it was, and and none of my teachers asked me to listen to it. You know,
Okay.
they just taught me the songs.
And but when you were at home, in your bedroom, in your own space, were you singing those songs or were you still going back and singing the standards?
I was singing standards. I was singing along with Natalie Cole
Hmm.
and Denise Williams
Yes. Who I love both. Yes.
and the Cars and Alan Parsons Project.
And but how did your voice fit when you having classical training and then singing those standards? Was could you not hear that there was something going on, that the training was not matching? To me, it would be like having baseball lessons and then going to play tennis. You're still hitting the ball, you still have a racket in your hand, but it's a different game. Did you have that feeling going on, or were you none the wiser?
What I remember, Marissa, is feeling very frustrated that I couldn't sing loudly,
Oh,
because this was during the time in the most, I think, probably, I don't know, a good number, good percentage, if not most, of classical teachers believed that to sing in chest register would be intrinsically bad for a singer, a female singer,
mm-hmm,
estrogen influenced voice.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so they would, everything I sang was in head register. And so, of course, if you don't have any familiarity with your chest register, as soon as you're at A4, you start to get very, very, very quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And of course, everything Natalie Cole sang, where I was singing along with her, was in that range. So I remember, I just remember feeling frustrated because I didn't understand what was happening. People don't when they're just starting, or
Mm.
so yeah. So I just remember feeling frustrated for years and years and years about not being able to sing loudly.
Yes. And then you started your performance career. Do you remember your first gig? Your first paid job?
Oh, my
What?
first paid job? Oh,
Yes, your
yes,
first
I do.
paid job.
I do actually. It was with, and I was surprised I got paid. It was with my friend Tom, who we were strumming guitar in a pub together, and uh, yeah, and being ignored and stuck in the corner, and and I think we got paid 20 quid, and I
Oh
was
my
very
gosh.
surprised.
I think I got paid $20 for my first job. And I was thinking about that this morning. That's what inspired the question. My first gig, I was 15 years old. Just turned 15. It was my very first band, and my very first song was the start of a floor show. It was in the days that we used to do floor shows, which essentially was a show on the floor, walking around to all through all the tables and being like the headline singer and singing Killing Me Softly, which had the Roberta Flack version, had that first part that was ad lib, and it was, it was no accompaniment. And that was my very first song in my very first paid gig, on the floor, walking around tables. And I thought, really, how scary that must have been. But I don't remember it being scary. I think I was just such a diva that I didn't care. I was like, oh, look at me go. I'm so amazing at the ripe old age of 15.
Because
But
what could go wrong when you're 15?
yeah,
Yeah.
singing Killing Me Softly. Yeah,
That's a showstopper for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was
when
18. I was 18.
Yeah. So when you were performing during your performance career, what kind of music were you mainly performing?
Oh, mainly, I was two people during my performance career.
Hmm.
Overwhelmingly, 90%, 85%, I was freelance singer, jukebox with legs, whatever you want. That's what I'm singing.
Hmm. Yep.
And the other 15% I was Meredith, and those were jazz standard gigs because
Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
did you not perform any classical music at all? Did you have a classical career?
No, no, no.
Okay.
I never wanted that. I had no eyes for classical ever, not for
Mm-hmm.
1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
actually, now, okay, I have to take that back. When I
okay.
got out of college, when I was graduated from the studio music and jazz program at the University of Miami, I had had zero training in contemporary styles. I
Mm-hmm.
had taught myself some things from Cindy Lauper and um, Patti Labelle specifically.
Yes. Okay.
They were my
Very different.
teachers. They were my teachers. And yeah, so I was graduated. I auditioned for some things and was not selected for anything. And then I auditioned for the Greater Miami Opera Guild, and I was selected to be in their chorus for that season.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a yes, that was my 8 months of being a paid classical singer.
Okay. Out of like probably how many years of performing, you had 8 months. And yet, and yet you had years and years of classical.
Yeah.
It's the roles are very reversed here and the training's very reversed. I want to know what's wrong with that picture.
Yes, you and me
Some,
both, Marissa.
mm. So then I know that you had a very poor experience when you were singing in a road band.
Yes.
So
So
talk to us.
that's how I finally got to be a rock singer, be the pop singer I wanted to be. But again, I hadn't had any training. I had figured out certain things for myself. And so in those days, in the olden days before the internet, you were
Hmm.
able to get jobs with a cassette tape
Yes.
and a photograph,
Yes.
both of which I had. So I was hired by a road band that was touring the Western United States.
Hmm.
And I did that for just about 9 months, almost to the day.
Hmm.
And almost to the day, I got in my car and drove home because I had zero voice left. I had no voice at all. Because the gigs, I mean, it was either 5 or 6 nights a week, and it was either 3 or 4 hours a night, night after night after night.
Hmm.
In
Yes.
in amplified situations, you know what it's like. The bass
Yes.
amp is on your right side, and the guitar amp's on your left side, and the kick drums in your 18 inches from your butt,
Hmm.
and the monitors are on the floor by your feet, but the sound is going up over your shoulders. You can't really hear very well.
Yes.
And so, yeah. And so even if in retrospect, I wonder, even if I had had some training, would I have survived that any better? I don't know.
Hmm. Now that's really interesting because your story sounds very familiar to me and very similar to my own experience when I was touring in a rock band and an all male band except for me as the chick singer, and no
Mm-hmm.
one listened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had no voice in that band, literally. When I spoke up and complained that I couldn't hear myself, nobody listened. I had to lug the
Mm-hmm.
equipment alongside the guys when we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the money to pay for roadies. Sound check would be spent predominantly on the drum, on every
Yeah.
every part of the drum kit was mic'd up. I'd get test 1, 2, 3, great. And
Yes.
then,
Yes.
yes, and then when you had an audience and you had the ambience, that would all change again.
Of
And
course.
but no allowances were made for that. But the lifestyle on the road was really difficult. And that's where I get really cranky. And I talked about this with Laurie Sonnenberg, the
Mhm.
shaming that we have in our singing voice community for people who sing CCM styles, predominantly rock, that there is a stigma attached to the styles themselves being detrimental to vocal health. But if people knew the lifestyle that you live on the road, especially as a woman, it is not it is not going to help your cause in terms of vocal health. And I totally empathize with you. I totally get it. And I'm glad that you talked about that. So with your voice, you had no voice. What were the warning signs leading up to that? Or did you have any, or did your voice just cut out?
No, I definitely had warning signs which I chose to ignore
As we all do.
for a long time.
Yeah.
The big one was I didn't have a voice until 4 in the afternoon, and then I could
Mm,
sort of sing. But in the
mm.
morning, nothing. Yeah.
Wow. And did that become that it
I
was
remember.
taking you longer and longer to recover from the gig from the night before?
I think so. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I don't remember specifically because I did not keep any sort of a journal about it, and it was a long time ago. And I tend to be you know, sort of a Protestant stiff upper lip stoic kind of person. Like if it's just keep going. And also I think what you're talking about in terms of being the only woman in the band, which is true for most female singers,
hmm.
not so much really young people now, but certainly sort of any of us who are north of 30, we were typically the only female in the band, and so we were loath to complain or do anything that we considered whining or bitching, right? So
Yes,
we just suck it up,
absolutely. But also too with the industry, if you don't work, you don't get paid.
and then there's that.
And
Yeah.
then
Well,
and
that was part of it. I remember I had to sing for 2 weeks while they were waiting for my replacement
I
because
had to
he had gigs
yeah.
booked for a year.
Yes. Well, I had to sing for a further 3 months because
Oh
I was bullied into continuing to perform.
my goodness.
Yes, they told me that if I didn't honor the gigs that we already had, that I would never work again. They would see to it, my
Oh,
management said they would see to it that I would never work again. So
oh,
I had to continue singing.
I'm
And by the
sorry.
end of it, I was a hot mess. I mean, not just vocally, but emotionally,
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
psychologically. The trauma was
Yes.
incredible. But anyway, this is about
That
you.
is trauma. No, but it's that is also about me, and that is what you just described, Marissa, is literally the reason that I put myself out there. Because
Mhm,
I will be honest, I am very uncomfortable putting myself out there.
mhm.
I would rather not be in any sort of the public eye. I would
Right.
rather just sort of quietly be doing what I've been doing for the last 30 years, just working with pop singers and helping them. But it just became, it just it just seemed like I had something that would help that situation that we just described, that nobody else seemed to be doing, and I felt compelled to share it. And so I do, and it's because of that, because I don't want to see another 14-year-old girl with classical get put in classical lessons with a teacher who thinks that pop is bad, or
Mhm,
who's not trained to teach pop,
mhm.
and just begin this journey that's going to end up, or could not going to, but has the potential to end up just shaping this person's life and self-image, and inviting trauma in their young adult life. I you can tell I get a little wound up
No,
about
that's
that.
great, but we need to speak up. And this is the
Yeah.
perfect place because there's no judgment here.
Yeah.
And I've learnt to be courageous in the past 12 months with this podcast. And I've spoken about things I've never spoken about. And it takes courage to do that. But it's so liberating and it's empowering other people, Meredith. So
Yes.
absolutely get worked up because we need to shout this from the rooftops.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of my, as I've had to really explore my own values around this so that I can stay anchored when the wind blows, is I want to share confidence. I want people to feel confident. I want people who have come from a classical background but who teach. And let's face it, if you are somebody who teaches voice and you have been teaching voice for more than 5 years, you're someone who's going to keep teaching voice because you have found something in that serves your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very it's a very unique line of work,
Yes.
and the kind of people that do it are quite extraordinary in my experience.
Yeah.
And so I want that person to feel confident as she goes in to empower another young musician, or another, well, doesn't have to be young, another musician.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want those people to leave her studio feeling confident, because art is scary. Art is about taking chances. We are performance artists. Singing is about art.
It
So
is.
if we don't feel confident, we won't explore our medium. We will
So
just stay
true.
safe and make what I used to call the singing like sound. We will, that's where we will stay. And that is not, then why do we have it? Why do we have the art? Why are we spending all this time and energy and money and love and passion on pursuing excellence or even competence in this particular art form if we are not going to then have the confidence to explore the art form because
Yes.
we're afraid of doing something wrong? you
Yep.
know
So true.
I so anyway, that's I have a very strong value in the need for confidence in art. And so what I hope in sharing what I do share is that I am sharing that.
It sounds like that is going to be your legacy.
I hope so. I
Yes,
hope so. I
and
want
well
people
said
to feel
too.
confident.
You articulated that so beautifully, and you're so right in what you're saying, and I wish everyone had that attitude, because I do believe, and this is unfortunate, that there are a lot of teachers though that do teach for the sake of money, and they don't have empathy for the sounds that they're listening to, and they do it because they have to put food on the table. There are teachers that don't like the sounds that their students are creating in the voice studio, and they don't truly understand how they're made, but continue to take the money and don't receive the proper training that they need to have the understanding they require to teach those styles in a sustainable manner.
And you are talking about popular styles specifically, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes, and yes, and specifically pop, rock, anything. Well, not all CCM styles, but I would say predominantly pop and rock. And dare I dare I use that dirty four-letter word belt? Dare I use that dirty four-letter word? Wow. When I first went to study formally, it was in my late 40s. I was accepted as a postgraduate student. I didn't have a bachelor's, and I was studying vocal pedagogy. And I was in a room full of classical students, and I dare not. I didn't know belt was a thing. Like I just belted, and I just
You just
thought that's
sang.
how you sang,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
I could belt really high, and my voice was really healthy, and never had drama with my voice except for that time in the rock band. But dare I tell people that I belted? Honestly, you what? You
Yeah.
belt? Oh, and I go, don't we all in this? This is what we do in our when you sing those styles. But anyway, I'm going to rein this back in here now. So I want to know.
Okay. Raider in.
Well, okay, rein her in, because I want to know, how did you heal your voice?
Oh.
What did you do?
Oh yeah, that was a very sad year. So I got a day job. Although in my day job I learned computers.
Mm,
So that was good because computers were not that old at that point. So
no.
it wasn't a normal thing to be fluent at them. So that was my day job. And then I took piano lessons and I saw a laryngologist and a Reiki practitioner.
Oh, love it.
And yes, what I remember about that, Marissa, oh, this is so funny. You're dredging up all these memories for me. I
That's
remember that part
great.
of my therapy from the laryngologist was that I had to not speak for 6 weeks. He said, if you want to avoid surgery, and I don't want you to have surgery, he goes, you have to just not speak for 6 weeks. So I did not speak for 6 weeks. And it was one of the most interesting times of my life. The way people respond to you when you do not verbalize in their direction is extraordinary. I remember my father speaking to my sister. I'm sitting, 3 feet away from
Mhm.
each of them, and my father telling my sister to tell me something, as though I couldn't. People would assume that when I wrote something on a piece of paper that I was also unable to hear. And
That
even
is
my
the
father fell into
weirdest.
that.
But did he
It was
think
so.
that you discriminated, that you couldn't hear a dad voice, but you could hear a sister voice?
I have no idea. I just remember sitting there thinking, well, that's odd.
That
But
is
but
so odd.
it was so interesting. I sometimes think I would like to do that again and actually journal and see
That
what happens. But yeah, that was a year of healing. And then I moved to Chicago because I had friends from college in Chicago. And at the University of Miami, basically we just talked about going to New York, Chicago, or LA.
mhm.
And I didn't feel like LA or New York would be good fits for me. So I moved to Chicago and sort of got going here as a freelancer, and that's where I found my first singer teacher of popular styles, and so that was when I first really started to feel like I was singing instead of just making the singing like noise.
Yes. And you were allowed to actually be louder?
Well, yes, I mean by that time I had figured out my own way to access my chest register phonation. Um, I had figured a lot of it out, but yeah, he was teaching me how to mix and giving me the space to play around with styles, and yeah, it was just good. It was very good.
And now you brought up Cyndi Lauper and Patti Labelle, and that you had your training was through those two singers. What did you learn from them? That is so interesting that you mentioned those two names, and they're very different singers.
Because those are I'm sure there were more, but those were my strong memories. I have a strong memory of being in my car and listening to Girls Just Want to Have Fun
Hmm.
and copying her. And that was the first time I remember accessing my chest register.
Wow. So through mimicking,
Mm, yeah, yeah.
that's how
And
I
then,
first learned to sing.
yeah,
Basically, in pop and rock styles, was
I
mimicking.
Well, we all do, don't we? I mean,
Hmm.
singers are mimics. And
Hmm.
if I hadn't been shuttled off into lessons, I probably would have done just as you did. But, and then Patti LaBelle, my memory of her is sitting in the college cafeteria, and there were TVs on and no sound. So it was just watching this show. And Patti LaBelle came on, and I, of course, was like, oh, there she is. And I was watching her sing and watching
Oh, okay. What she was
her
doing
mouth
with,
was just hanging open the whole
yes,
time.
yes,
And I went, ooh. And then I
right.
spent that was my senior year. And then I spent basically that whole year in the practice rooms, practicing in the mirror with my mouth open like that. It wasn't anything anyone was teaching me. I
Hmm.
just figured if Patti LaBelle did it, it was worth figuring out. And
Okay.
that opened up all kinds of new things I could do with my voice. And I remember thinking, this should not be a secret.
What was the main thing, though? You said it opened up a whole bunch of things. What can you recollect? What was the biggest aha that you had from watching that?
Being loud,
Okay.
being able
Mm-hmm.
to sing loudly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was head voice girl. I remember one of my accompanist in the jazz program turning to me and saying, "Can't you sing any louder?" I was so ashamed
Ah,
because the answer was no, I cannot. I do not know how.
wow. Things that we go through. I mean, us singers, we're pretty messed up at the best of times. We're so in our heads, and we're, we're our worst enemies most of the time, just criticizing everything that comes out of our mouths. So to have even more pressure on you, that would have been so traumatic. How did you transition into teaching then? Was it something you fell into by accident, like most of us?
No, I was very intentional about it. I was an evangelist. After about 2 years of studying, and so when I'm studying, but I'm not just taking lessons. I'm gigging every weekend. So I'm gigging between 1 and 4 3-hour jobs every weekend. Some of them with bands I already knew. Some of them where I'm just walking into the performance and shaking hands and meeting the band and then performing for 3 hours. So
Yes.
the life of a freelancer, right?
Yes, I've done all that. I did it
Yeah.
for years. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, because it pays, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's
Hmm.
right. So I'm taking lessons and I'm singing, and I'm very aware of the changes that are happening in my ability level. And I started to get very excited. At about 2 years, I said to my teacher, "I want to start teaching too." And he said, "Great. First, do no harm, Meredith. Why don't you take a
Wise
year of
teacher.
graduate level vocal pedagogy with the guy in Chicago. He was the guy that everybody took pedagogy with, right? So I went and signed up and kept taking my lessons with my teacher and took the pedagogy class. And then when I started teaching at the end of that, this kind of makes me choke up to think about it. I had a teacher and I had a coach, and they were both Chicago studio singers. And I asked them if they would observe and give me feedback. And both of them, sat in on some of my lessons
Right.
and then sat and talked to me afterwards about how I could be better.
Hmm.
And I mean, just so
How
much generosity,
generous.
and wouldn't take money for it.
That is incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes. So
And then when I worked
they
at the
were
center,
teachers of service too. They weren't just singing teachers, but they were serving the community as well.
yes, yes, they were just such beloved people in the community, in the music community here. So then, a few years later, when I was working at the Center for Voice, that was part of the culture there. Is if your student canceled, you would just walk next door and sit in on somebody else's lesson. And so we got to watch each other teach, and there was a lot of, good-natured thievery going on and
Hmm.
discoveries, and it
Hmm.
was a great environment.
That's the best way to learn.
Hmm.
And we have to be bowerbirds. That's what we call them, those birds that go around and grab a little bit of everything to build their nests.
Yeah.
They just grab every bit of stuff that they can and then put it together, and the next thing they have a beautiful nest.
Yes. A
Yeah.
bower.
And then you wrote a book, Money Notes, where you introduce, and you have that behind you for our YouTubers.
Oh,
You
yes, I do.
you have yeah, good on you. And where you introduce your neurovocal method. So tell us about how the book and the method, like what came first and what is it all about?
Okay. I love to talk about this, but I do have to tell you that recently, and not least encouraged by your questions to me of a month ago, I'm just calling it neurovocal. I can't with the method thing, because when I called it neurovocal method, see, I'm not an academic, right? I don't hang out with academics, although people, some people in my family are that, but I don't work at a college. So I had no idea what,
A
I don't know,
method?
the just all the baggage that came with the word method. I was using the dictionary term, not the music
No,
department term. So
no.
anyway, so I don't want that to keep people from me. So I've just dropped it. And I'm just calling it Neuro-Vocal for popular styles. The end.
Wow. So was that after our conversation?
It was. Well, but you were sort of the straw for me that broke the camel's back.
Yes,
Because people,
because yeah, people think of a method as something that in week one we all do this, no matter what your issue is as a student. You come in and we all have to follow the same training, whether it's something
right.
that needs fixing or not, is
So
usually.
there's that piece, and then there's also the guru piece. So those two pieces together were just
Yes.
like, so neither of those are me. So if that's the connotation people have with that word, it's got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to go. So
Yeah.
off it went.
Well, you
So
could
off it went.
call it neurovocal training.
I could.
That would be another word as well.
I could, but that people have attitudes about that too.
Oh my gosh,
So
just too many attitudes for my liking.
I know, I don't know. So anyway, I've just dropped the descriptor and just call it neurovocal, which for most people has no meaning
Okay, so
until
tell
they
us
hear
what
me
it
talk.
is. Let's give this neurovocal a meaning. Let's
Okay,
let's fly the flag for neurovocal.
let's fly the flag. So I mentioned earlier that the singer of popular styles in an amplified situation, and by the way, that's why I call it microphone music or popular styles. I personally do not love the term CCM, and I've heard you talk about this too. You don't love it either for the same reasons that I don't, which is that not all the music is contemporary, not all the music is commercial. So it's another one of those things. So
Hmm.
but for me, the connecting thread is that we sing into microphones.
Yes, and can I tell you that I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was around perhaps 2014 or 15 at a European conference, whether it was PVOC or ICVT, and Ingo Titze
Hmm.
talked about those styles as maybe we should call them microphone styles or
Really? Oh,
amplified
okay.
styles.
Now I feel so fancy right now.
Mm, mm. Yes, because
Me and Ingo were like this.
you really are.
No, I wish.
Okay. Well,
He
you could
doesn't know who
be.
I am.
You
No,
should
I'm
send
just
him a copy of your book and then you will
I,
be.
I should. I'm an
Or
Ingo
if he's
fangirl.
listening, Ingo, if you're listening, can
Ingo, I'm a
you
fangirl.
can you please make friends with Meredith?
Make friends.
Okay. So
So,
tell us about.
so here's the thing. So here we are. We're in these situations where we cannot hear ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and our training is for situations where we can hear ourselves. So our training, mm, our teacher probably is classically trained, and so her training came from an acoustic situation, an
Yes.
acoustic reality. And
Yes.
then we train one-on-one in an acoustic environment. And we practice at home, in our shower, in our bedroom, in these acoustic environments. And then we step onto stage and we are in an amplified environment and everything changes.
Yes.
All of the things you have been using to control your singing are useless. And that was something that became very, very clear to me. So that was part of my reality as a working singer as I am discovering popular neuroscience, which this is the 90s. Popular neuroscience is starting to come into being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regular people like me are able to get books written by neuroscientists.
Yes.
And and so I'm discovering this and starting just eating it up, thinking I did not put it together for singing at all. I just I was just thinking, this is fun. It's interesting. I am a closet science nerd and kind of always have been. And so, and also it's making my teaching. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I could start applying this to my teaching and it's a lot more interesting and da 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 da. So now, okay, fast forward to now. I'll just tell you what my thinking is and the way that I find that it works really, really well.
Yes.
So our brains are predictors. So if you have ever had Alexander technique, you have experienced your body predicting what your brain is telling it to do. And your brain is predicting before that. So every time I'm just going to keep this in motor activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time you are about to initiate a motor action, so a motor or open a motor memory. In my classes, I call it open the file. because we have these fairly complex motor memories that are for specific things that we are accustomed to doing, that we have practiced over and over again. So for me, and the thing that I use to demonstrate, because this is very universal, and you could try it now. Do you want to try it since we're on
Yes.
YouTube? Do you have a pen right now? Do you have a pen or a pencil nearby you?
Yes, I have one in my hand.
You do? Okay. So use your pen to be a pretend toothbrush and brush your teeth. Will you brush your teeth? Okay. Easy peasy. Right? So now with your toothbrush, you could walk around your house and pick the socks up off the floor and pet the cat and check your texts, and you could still be brushing your teeth.
I'm patting my cat. I'm
petting your cat, right?
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Charlie doesn't like being patted while I'm brushing my teeth.
You're getting
wet swipe.
You're getting virtual toothpaste on him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here you are brushing your teeth. Now, okay, so your brain has a very strong motor memory for brushing my teeth with my right hand. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, switch hands. Now try. Horse of a different color, isn't it?
Feels very different.
Feels very different.
Yes.
So that I
even
use
holding
that as even
the
holding
tooth,
it.
even holding it, I'm not sure.
No,
See, I have my pinky
right?
up. My pinky is up on my right hand, and on my left hand, my pinky is not.
Yeah. Because you don't have a motor memory,
No.
a unified motor function for brushing my teeth with my left hand.
Okay.
Okay, so and that's universal. There you have a lot of things that you do every day. So for singing, those of us who teach singing people come to us. If we were teaching guitar or piano or really any other instrument, we would have a certain percentage of our studio come to us who has never touched that instrument in their life. They don't have any old habits to break. But for singing teachers, 100% of the people that come to us are people who have practiced for hundreds or thousands of hours this thing that they want us to teach.
Yes, even if they're just singing in the car, they've sung.
Exactly.
Or in the shower, they've sung. Or if they've sung Happy Birthday, everyone's sung.
Exactly. So then they want us to teach them how to sing. But they already know how to sing. So we have two things happening here. One is we need to be cognizant of the fact that if we are teaching singers of popular styles, which I am, I need to be cognizant of the fact that they are going to be in situations where more often than not, they cannot hear themselves well or at all. And two, you already know how to do the thing that you're asking me to teach you how to do. Mm-hmm. So with those two things in mind, then we need to circumvent the predictive brain, because as soon as you imagine you're singing, Marissa, your brain starts singing before anything else has happened in your body. Mm-hmm. Your brain, I call it open the singing file. You have a very solid, if you think brushing your teeth with your left hand was weird, try singing differently.
Yes.
It's virtually impossible.
Yes.
Because if you think you're singing, you're going to sing the way you've always sung.
Yes.
And if the way that you've always sung is in some way limiting or not serving your purpose, or in the case of my students, a lot of the times who are gigging singers, is making it so that you are experiencing fatigue. So if I take a gig on Friday night, I then cannot sing on Saturday night. We can't have that, right? So because we have to be able to sing 2 nights in a row, or 3 nights, or 4 nights in a row. So if one of those things is happening, that means that your sing file is not meeting your needs. It is not serving your ends. It is not, as an artist, as a creator, as just the motor action of singing, is not being as efficient as it needs to be. So what do we need to do about that? And this is where what I teach, which is that we need to two things are happening. One is we're interrupting that motor memory by asking the brain to do something different. Now, most voice professionals have a bag of tricks where they interrupt the motor memory. And they may not say it in those words. They don't know what they're doing necessarily in that neurological framework, but they are, when somebody isn't getting their head voice and someone will say, well, make a sound like a siren going down the street. That's you interrupting the motor memory, the existing motor memory.
Right.
So most of us have that kind of thing. But then additionally, there's the level of concept and about singing. I mean, the feedback loop. So if I rely on my ears to teach singing, there's a couple things getting in my way. One is that my predictive brain is always trying to catch up with what I just heard. And what I heard, by the way, is suppressed, because when you sing, your auditory cortex is somewhat suppressed. And I'm hearing it in a way that only I hear it, because the vibrations that I'm creating are being accentuated through my jawbone and through the water in the tissue of my face. And so you and I are not hearing me the same way. I'm hearing it in a way that is exclusive to me. Yes. So those two things, the auditory cortex being suppressed, and then also once that sound goes into my ear, my brain has to process it, make sense of it, and decide what to do with the next sound. Now, happily, in neuroscience, time is measured in hundredths of a second. So we have that going for it. So things do happen very quickly in neuroscience. However, we as humans, and especially as artists, when we are singing, we also are conceptualizing as we move forward. So, scientists talk about this, the affective circle. So, your affect, your physical affect, is just about arousal and pleasure. So anything that is, so it's your high arousal, low arousal, it's pleasant or it's unpleasant. That's your affective circle. Right. Everything that you do beyond that is you conceptualizing.
Right.
Right. So if somebody says, brighten your sound, Marissa, that's a concept. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, if your concept, if I, as a voice teacher, I'm using listening to teach you, right? If I say, brighten your sound, Marissa, and you share your concept of brighten your sound, and it doesn't match what I wanted from you, then I might sing so that your brain can make sense of that concept.
Sure.
In a nonverbal way. Because you don't want to know the last 5 years of my vocal pedagogy classes, right? I just want you to make the sound.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yes.
So, but when we are using, when we're using listening and concept, then we're standing in between just really basic, healthy, efficient phonation. So not singing, just phonation. Mm-hmm. So healthy phonation can live in the affective circle, the circle of affect, right? It does not have to be part of your conceptual system.
Right.
So healthy phonation is just about your physical feeling, which, by the way, remember I talked about the feedback loop of the aural information, right? The feeling information doesn't go out and come back again and run through all your conceptual system. It just goes, I have an intention for a feeling. I reach for this affect that is free of judgment, that is free of concept, and I am experiencing a balanced arousal in a balanced pleasant or unpleasant. So I'm staying in that physiological circle of affect. I'm not going into the other space. And so once I have understood that, once I've taught my body how to reach for that, it will remember. And so, and this is the thing that is so fun for me whenever I work, especially with teachers, because teachers are so smart. I mean, when I teach my teacher classes, those are just thrilling for me because people get it so quickly. You know,
Yes.
like my students get it, but not they get it at a very physical level, not at an intellectual level. So when the teachers get it intellectually and physically at the same time, it's really delightful. So anyway, so we do a little bit of work around finding that affect, which initially really feels like you're on a tightrope, and then ultimately feels like, how did I ever not do this? And that allows the singer in a situation where she cannot hear herself, it allows her to reach for the feeling of healthy phonation and allows her to sing in that way so that she can then sing again tomorrow night. The stamina that people experience when they start to sing in this way, when they make the transition, and for most people it takes a while, you know, anywhere from a few weeks to a few months, but when they start to sing in this way, they're astounded at their stamina because it's so efficient, and it's so free of judgment. And so that's really fun. That is a really fun thing. And then, of
Wow.
course, there are other. So then, when you enter that world of just looking at the physiology of it only, we're not seeking a particular tonal outcome, because that's the other thing, Marissa. Do you mind that I'm just going on and on like this?
No, this is
I
great.
get a
I
little
don't have to
excited about this.
talk.
But I like when you talk. But the other thing is, if you have been trained for a classical or any kind of like acoustic training, you have been trained for a particular sonic outcome. That's part of the deal. It's not bad. It's what the genre is, right?
Yes.
There's a framework, and that framework and that's not just classical singing, it's all classical art. Every
Mm.
classical art that there is operates within a framework, and that defines the genre. So there's a particular sonic outcome that's expected and needed in order to meet the demands of that genre. Fair enough. That's not our world. We
No,
do not live in that world.
no.
So we do not, there literally is not one single musical value that you can tell me that I can say name you 5 famous singers who didn't have that and people loved them anyway. It didn't, just
Yes.
doesn't matter, right?
Yes.
So we, and all these things like you mentioned belting. So belting is a volume and texture, right? So we use volume, we use texture. Those are things that we do, and we don't have to learn supported breathing in the same way that a classical person does, because we can break up a phrase in the middle of a word if we want. We don't get fired from our jobs, you know
No.
that. It really doesn't matter. So that the other thing about when we teach popular styles, and if a teacher is understanding what the values of popular styles are, then it allows them to approach the student in a way that says, let's discover about your voice instead of trying to help you meet particular preset sonic outcomes, tonal outcomes, right? We get to just discover what it is about your voice and what is it about your singing that makes you what you are. And if you want to play around with copying other people's singing and seeing what words from their stylistic vocabulary feel good to you and sit with you now. And that's the other thing that's really fun. It's a now thing, because in 5 years you might be a totally different singer,
Yes.
or a different singer at any rate. And we can then be in that space that just allows for discovery, and a discovery artistically and personally, because as you were talking about earlier, the in our voice is our identity. If our right, so if the way that we treat our voice, the way we hear our voice, the way we interact with our voice, the way we use our voice, those things are going to reflect back into the experience of our lives in a
Absolutely.
positive, negative, or neutral way.
Yes. And the one of the things that you were touching upon there you were talking about having that expectation in terms of sound when it comes to classical singing, whereas in, I will use the term CCM here just for
Hmm.
the sake of
That's fine.
consistency
Hmm.
within our teaching circles, that in CCM styles, that uniqueness sells.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
and a lot of the uniqueness in the individual singer comes from their little imperfections. And you
absolutely.
can have imperfections. People want honesty. They want an honest, authentic performance across those styles. And that's what sells.
There's a very fundamental thing that I thought everybody knew, and that it seems like very few voice professionals are aware of. And I'm going to say it right now. And
Okay.
hopefully, some people who hear this will go, "Oh, I knew that," and some people will go, "Oh, what?" And that is this: classical. When you sing classical music, actually, when you are involved in any classical art form, right? Whether it's theater, dance, or perform, well, classical performing arts, right? Or
Mhm.
music. You are a vehicle for the performer's intent. I mean, sorry, the composer's intent. You are a
Absolutely.
vehicle for the composer's intent. So you are the translator. You are not the creator. Can you bring some of your own creativity into it? Yes, you can when you have earned it, but that's not your job. Your job is to bring the composer's intent to life. As a popular singer or a musician or any performing art, that's not the deal.
No,
We are the creator. So we are the ones who are, people don't care if it's perfect because we're not being compared to anyone. We
no.
can't even use the word perfect, you know.
Yes, yes.
So
And
because
yeah, you're so right, because I know when I was in the midst of my performance career, I had songs that I would sing night after night after night. And were they the same every night? No, because how I felt the night before was different to how I was feeling the next night, either physically, I was feeling differently, emotionally, whether I'd had a stressful day, whether there was something going on, I'd had an argument with my husband. So the delivery of the song was different every performance. I could never say, yes, I this is how I sing it and then replicate it night after night after night, because I felt different each night. And that's how we are as human beings. Our feelings can change by the second.
yeah, I mean, our feelings or just decisions,
Mm,
decisions to try something new. I've been singing this damn song every night for the past month. If I don't change it up, I'm going to kill myself.
yeah. But if
you
you're,
know,
yeah,
that's
but
a
if
little
you're,
dramatic, but
yeah,
I'm a singer. I get to
absolutely.
be
But
dramatic. But I feel the need to bring something new to this.
mm, mm. As a
And hopefully,
storyteller, and if you're emotionally connected to a song, it's going to be different, because your story will be different according to how you're feeling in that moment in time.
yes, if you are emotionally connected to the song, but there are a lot of people that are out there. I wasn't emotionally connected to most of the stuff that I sang when I was a working singer.
Mm,
I was just singing. So sometimes it was just like, what would make this more fun? Or I want to try this new skill that I've been working on. Or,
yeah,
I just, our artists are expansive by their nature. So they want to expand outward, even if it's risky. And that's why I talk about being confident, because taking a risk is scary and satisfying.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
that's one of the things, when people, this is so interesting. Wait, are we over time? Do we have time?
Yes, keep going.
Okay. One of the things that I've noticed, and I would love it if I could find a study on this, because I don't think there probably is one, but it's so interesting. What I see in people who are trying to adopt these new behaviors. So I ask them for these new behaviors, and they have this. So let's pretend it's a voice teacher. So she has a lot of skill level. She's intelligent. She's experienced. She's been a singer. She's been a voice teacher. She knows what's going on. She's willing. She is doing great. She's doing exactly what I've asked her to do. She can feel it in her body. Yes, I'm doing the thing. And then meanwhile, and I do this because it's always in the background, she feels something not good. She feels scared or frustrated or annoyed with me or
Right.
or something, right? So there's some kind of like negative feeling going on back there, even at the same time that she's having a positive experience and she's completely willing. And it's so interesting to me. And I kind of think my theory about this, which could be total malarkey, but what I think it is that so our brains are really good at giving us what we ask for, at responding to our intentions. If you ask your brain to do something new, it will figure out a way in the moment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But you're very aware of the fact that it's new. Well, that's because you don't have a neural pathway for that behavior because it's brand new. So when you're creating this ad hoc neural pathway that on the fly because it's a new behavior. So I think that when these behaviors, especially motor behaviors, are brand new and we don't have an existing neural pathway for them, and we're really stimulating the neuroplasticity, we're really like poking at our brain, so to speak, we feel uncomfortable emotionally. We have a sense of some kind of discomfort that then we may or may not categorize. But and then as people are able to predict, I know that this is going to feel like, I know what the outcome is going to be. Well, then that
it's fine.
Feeling, that buzz in the background just goes away.
Yes. Yes.
So
I think it's probably a little bit of self-doubt because most of us don't like it. When we can't predict the outcome, we have a fear of the outcome, and it's probably that little bit of self-doubt. Am I going to be able to do it?
That's definitely one of the manifestations. I've seen a lot of different manifestations. Self-doubt is definitely in there. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yes. So with your training, now it's specifically for microphone singers, do you teach it to classically trained singers and musical theatre singers as well?
Sure. If they want to learn, I'm happy to help them.
Okay. It can be applied to those singers too, is what I'm asking.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's about helping people find the voice that they want. And sometimes someone's been singing for a long time and now they're, for whatever reason, because they're at a certain age or because they want to sing more frequently than classical training allows them to sing, or just because they felt like they were roped into the pipeline and then they never that wasn't the music of their heart. So for any number of reasons, people will come to me and say, is this a safe thing to do? Can I find a way to do this? And I think that, don't you? I think absolutely everybody gets to have a voice.
Yes. And with your training, then where do you typically start with a new student?
Where do I typically start?
I
typically start by finding out what they have in mind, what their vision is for themselves.
Yes. And do you have exercises that you've created as part of your training program, or do you use?
I do.
You
do? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the way that I do this, so I have these principles, right? These physiological, neurological principles that are pretty darn reliable. And then I have exercises that I have found over time make it possible for people to understand both intellectually and physically, because we're singers. We have to know what it feels like, right? So intellectually and physically understand these principles. And then once people understand them, I say, have at it. If you find something that works better, one of the luxuries of being a one-on-one private voice teacher is that we can respond in the moment to the person in front of us on that day. So,
Yes.
so if the thing that I gave you isn't working and you have a better idea, go to town. Give it a shot. It's not brain surgery. No one's going to die.
Can we do a little bit of that?
Do you want? Do
I
you want to
hope
do
so.
it?
I haven't killed anyone yet, so I'm glad you haven't either. There's maybe some I might have liked to have killed. No. So, no, tell me.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do a little role play.
Do
Let's
you
do a
want to
thing.
do one?
Let's
Okay.
do
So
something.
I'm going to ask you to do the thing that I call in my teaching classes, I call it moving the big rock, because it is the smallest and the biggest thing. When that is to shift your awareness from what you are hearing to what you are feeling, which
Okay.
is such a simple thing to say, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
It's so simple to
You can
say.
say that. Yes.
Yeah, so easy to shift your awareness from what we have going for us is it's very difficult to pay attention to two things at once. And if you think you are, you're not actually. You're just shifting back and forth. So if it is your intention to focus on a single thing, your brain will help you out with that job. So we're going to try to keep you there, okay?
Okay.
All right. So will you please just hum for me? Any old pitch, comfortable pitch. Great. So the humming sound you just made was on an M like Marissa, right?
Yes.
So I would like you to now do that same thing on an N like Nancy. Great. So did you notice that there was a slight difference in the way those two things felt?
Yes, and the end was slightly more unreliable, and
Slightly.
yes, but
Okay.
yes, okay. I
Okay.
won't
So
go into the reason. My voice is a little unreliable at the moment because I through lack of sleep, I'm going through a little bit of a grieving process. So
Yes.
yes, my voice, I'm a little bit
Yes. Well,
fatigued.
you also have stress. You also have hormone receptors on your vocal folds, and cortisol is a hormone. So,
Yes.
um, uh, so maybe Marissa, we could pick a slightly lower pitch. Do you want to try it on a lower pitch and see if that
Yes, much better.
Yeah, that's better.
Hmm.
Okay, good. Let's stay with that then. All right. So will you do your M like Marissa and N like Nancy, please? So there's a slight difference between those two, yeah?
Yes,
And from the sound of it, it sounds to me like the N is slightly more present to you.
it is, and it's slightly
Yeah?
more comfortable.
Slightly more comfortable. Very good. Okay, so now will you please, and if you want to close your eyes to help you with this, feel free to do that. Bring your attention to the front of your face and then hum on that N like Nancy again. Okay, can you feel that?
Yeah, I'm trying to feel it less
Okay.
in the
So
throat and but it's
it's
like a
okay. No.
sympathetic vibration.
I will help you. Don't worry. Okay, so
Okay.
all I want you to do is just hum on an N. That's all I'm asking. And
Okay.
asking you with your attention on the front of your face, can you feel anything?
Yes, I can now.
Very good. Okay. So the thing that you're feeling, is it something that you can point to or is it more generalized feeling?
No,
Is it
I
like
can actually almost feel like a vibration here
Okay, very good.
around the
Perfect. Okay.
nose.
Perfect. Great. I'm glad it was so specific for you.
Hmm.
So now will you close your eyes again and do that again? And this time, before you make the sound, Marissa, will you please anticipate that feeling that you just described to me?
Okay.
Very good. Okay, perfect. So now you notice about that sound, it's not a pretty sound, it's a very plain sound.
Yeah, that's
And
okay.
it forced you to really pay attention to what your body was doing and how that felt to you, right?
Yes.
Okay. So okay. So we're going to move this around a little bit
Okay.
So here's where it gets a little bit tricky. As soon as your brain hears me hitting keys on the piano, it will go,
Yes.
"Oh yay, we're singing!"
Yes.
So
That's what
it will
I
try
tell
to.
my students. Okay.
Yes,
That's why we do a lot of work without music.
yes. So what I'd like you to do is really each time I play a pitch, you can hear the pitch in your brain. Reach for that same feeling, okay, and then hum. Ready?
Okay. On the end. Yep.
On the end, yeah. Great. So take an easy breath. Know what it's going to feel like. Good. You're fine. Great. Easy breath. Anticipate the feeling.
Okay.
Good. And here's your pitch, and just know what it's going to feel like. Just reach for the feeling. Great. Let's do one more. Great. So now as you move through those half steps, you notice that each one feels ever so slightly different.
Yes.
But you're not creating that difference. You are allowing for that difference.
Aha. And that's where we have to see. And I was having a little moment back here thinking, am I doing this correctly? It feels different.
Yes. There it was.
I had the self-doubt.
That's exactly what I was talking about.
Because I was thinking, I was questioning whether it was correct or not because it felt different every time.
It does feel different, doesn't it?
Yes.
But you were allowing for those natural changes. So what we just went up a minor third. The lowest note was a G, highest note was a B flat. So which is not very far on a piano, but it's significant in a voice, as you know. And so each half step, you were not creating a change, you were allowing for that change in sensation. And you notice as you're doing that, and if you want to try again, we can touch on this and do it one more time, but you notice as you're doing this that you are aware of that buzzy feeling in your face, which, again, you know this is a component of all popular styles, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That placement, right? Whatever word people use. And that your larynx was very relaxed, like you didn't have a sense of it being engaged because you were very competent at tricking it out of singing. You were just in that affective circle of arousal and pleasure, right? So you were right in the middle of you had enough, you were in that balanced space. You had enough energy that you were creating the buzz, but not so much that you were working hard or trying to be loud.
Exactly. I wasn't thinking about anything else other than what you asked me to think about.
Which also set you free of aesthetic judgment.
Absolutely.
So you can imagine that if you're using this way of approaching things, that as you get into those higher notes where singers often struggle with aesthetic judgment because it can sound pretty bad up there in a high chest blend, especially when they're not accustomed to it. Mm-hmm. When we're able to shift back to looking, but how does it feel, right? And step away from the sonic outcome and just say, what does it feel like? It helps people get past those, bridging the brakes, as they like to say in whatever. Whatever people say.
Whatever people say. So with this training.
So you can see, Marissa, I'm kind of like, I'm very nerdy. I'm way outside of the box here.
But if it works, it works. And I think this is where people need to stop being judgmental. There's more than one way to achieve an end result. And if something works and you're creating healthy, sustainable technique with your students, well, isn't that a fantastic thing? It doesn't matter that it's different to what everyone else teaches. And who has the right to say that it's wrong?
See, this is what I love about your podcast. You always say stuff like that.
But it's true, though.
You like when people color outside the lines.
I do love I can say that I learn something from every guest that I have on the show. Everyone teaches me something because what we're doing is valuable. All of us, what we're doing is valuable. And people are coming together with new ideas, new concepts, new training. It means that the pedagogy keeps evolving.
Yes, it's so fun, isn't it?
Yes, and we have in across CCM or popular music styles, we have an ever growing landscape of music styles, and we have to be able to keep adapting the training to compensate for that growing landscape of music styles. And so what you're teaching, you feel that you can adapt and for those styles, it will serve across a number of styles.
Yeah. It helps everybody. I say that it's for popular styles because that's, you know, that's my deal, right? I'm not qualified to say that I teach classical. But
Mm.
the classical teachers who have taken my class have to the person said that it has positively affected their classical singing as well.
Wow.
So again,
I
I would never put that in my copy on my page because but if somebody says it, I will, yes, I will share that.
Yes. Now we've got to start wrapping this up. And
Hmm.
so we're getting to the last few questions. And by the way, we're going to share your links to your book, your website, to whatever training you have coming up in the future. If you have any
Oh,
teacher
good.
training that's coming up, we will share everything with our listening audience in the show notes.
Great.
So
Well, my book is 75% off now because I'm starting to write the next one.
good on you. See, continually evolving. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Yes. What
Hmm.
can we do better to ensure that we meet our students' needs as teachers?
Oh, that's such a good question. That is such a good question. I had not planned on that question, but I will tell you what just leapt into my
Yes,
head,
yes, please
which
do.
is humility, is to be humble and to be a servant.
I love that. I totally agree with that. I think, yes, it's not about us, it's about our students. And we need to listen to them and listen to what their needs are
Hmm.
in order to best serve them.
Even when they don't know what their needs are, sometimes we can help them find that. But we have
Yes,
to be very careful not to impose our agenda on them.
what we do is we have to leave our biases at the door.
Which is easy to say,
Yes.
hard to
What,
do.
so last question. What is the greatest piece of advice you would like to give to our singing voice community?
Oh my, I'm not qualified to give advice to
You
the
are,
voice community.
you so are. You're an experienced, nerdy, amazing teacher. So what would you like to share with them in terms
I
of
guess,
advice?
okay, well, I'll tell you. I guess I'll respond by when I read the forums sometimes, I guess the things that I never respond to because I just don't have a space in my brain for it is when people get very rigid and rule bound. Even in classical music, when people say this is the way something absolutely must be, I want people to remember this is art. And as teachers, we are servants to artists. We're artists ourselves. I'm not diminishing that at all. But yeah, being rigid doesn't serve anyone. And so I just guess I wish everyone would be able to be flexible and open and interested in other art forms and look for the beauty and the differences rather than what is right and wrong.
That is a brilliant answer.
Thank you.
That is an absolutely brilliant, beautiful answer. Thank you. And I agree with you. definitely. I agree with
I
everything
know
that
you
you've
love all
said.
kinds of music.
I do love all kinds of music. Yes, I'm very open to
Yeah,
listening to everything. Now,
yeah.
Meredith, you have been so generous with your time. I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us. I want to thank you and good luck with everything. And I'm going to
Thank
see you
you.
in Chicago. So I'm not going to the States this year. I'm meant to be in Detroit for a conference, but I'm going to present virtually at that one. I would have come to Chicago otherwise. But look, the best of everything to you, and I look forward to catching up with you sometime soon in person, and wish you all the best with all your work that
That
you're
would be
doing.
fun.
It's fabulous and very
Thank
much needed.
thank you. Thank you, Marissa. And
Take
thank you
care.
so much for having me. I feel honored to be part
No,
of this great community you're
thank
creating.
you
It's
for being on
lovely.
the show. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing. Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.